Hello everyone. So today I'm talking about the history of programming languages. Now, the programming languages that almost everyone has heard of or has known how to use dates back to 1958 with languages like Algo, B. Now B is so surprising because me, I've heard of C but I've never heard of B. 1958, if you're just to hear it, it sounds like so young, but if you are to look at Uganda in 1958 and currently, you will see a very big difference. Languages like Algol, B, and others of the 1958 were very simple, and I don't think they could be used to make complex apps. So, what apps did these languages make? Well, there is a known game called Bat is a Brain. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, but it was made with it was made in the 1950, and the languages that existed then were the Algol and B. So I think, yeah, maybe they were made with those. So, like I said, Algol and its colleagues were very simple languages, and by the 1970s, applications had gone like complex. There was the need for complex applications, which were very difficult to write in Algol and B. So a new language called C was introduced by Dennis Ritchie. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the famous man Dennis Ritchie we are talking about, the person who made C. So C was named so because it came out after a language called B. So when C was made, programming became easier because back then it was very hard to create complex applications with languages like Algol and B. So in 1970, C was made and making complex applications became somehow easy. So that is when now the time for operating systems began coming up. So I know you're asking yourself, if there were no operating systems, then how were people writing apps? But the operating systems then were not so complex. Now with C, complex operating systems like Unix were made. So this is one of the computers that existed back then in 1950s when the dominant languages were the Algo and B. So I'm even lost where the screen is and if I could put it in my pocket, but obviously about pocket, I don't think so. In fact, if you open your calendar right now and try to go back in time till as late as as early as 1960, you won't reach 1960 because your calendar on the operating system only dates to a minimum of 1970. That only shows to us that the current operating systems that we have were made around 1970, and that was the time when C had just been made. In the 1970s, programmers could easily handle the problem of scaling or the problem of writing complex applications using C. But then in late 1970s, that is around 80, there was a new approach to programming called the object-oriented programming. So back then people were using the structured programming, but now in the late 1970s, the new approach came up, which is the object-oriented programming. And with object-oriented programming, a language called C with classes was made. And that language is the one we now call C++. But also back then programmers had like two problems. One was the problem of scaling, writing big applications with the structured languages. But by 1980, the problem was solved. Now there's just one problem which they haven't solved, and that is the ability to write one application for all operating systems. So by late 1980, James Gosling and other teams started working on a language that would be able to run on all operating systems with just one source code. Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Gosling, the famous man, the man we are talking about right now. By 1990, the first working version of the language was released as Oak. So after the first working version was made, more teams were added to the work on the language, and after 18 months, that is by 1991, the first version was released but its name was changed from Oak to Java. So by the time Oak was released, it's now Java. By the time Java was released, the World Wide Web was also on evolution. It was also coming up. So remember now, on the World Wide Web, people with different operating systems could access. So if you're making apps, you would need to target all the operating systems, and Java was the language for this. So the evolution of the World Wide Web made Java very famous because you could write only your source code once and run on every operating system. With the other languages, you need to play around with your source code, compile or change other things for other operating systems. So this has been the video. Thanks for watching. And if you liked the video, be honest and press the like button.